My name's Margaret, but everyone just calls me Maggie. I'm 60, and I've lived my whole life in a small coastal town in New South Wales. And what I'm about to tell you, it will change the way you look at your own family, the same way it changed mine brutally and forever. Because 3 days ago, my own daughter and her husband tried to kill my husband and me by pushing us off the cliff we'd walked along for decades. I remember the fall in flashes, the sky spinning, the scrub coming up far too fast, then darkness. When I came to, I was lying half buried between rocks and dry bush, with the taste of blood and dirt thick in my mouth. My ears were ringing, my left leg numb, as if it no longer belonged to me. Somewhere in the distance, waves were crashing against the headland steady, almost indifferent. Then I heard Peter. "Mags, don't move, just play dead." Even with his ribs busted and his breath rattling, he still sounded steady, that old, stubborn calm only Aussie blokes seem to manage when everything's gone to hell. But that wasn't the worst part of that day. The worst part was what he told me as we lay there, pretending to be corpses at the bottom of that gorge. A truth he had kept from me for nearly 30 years. A truth about our son. For most of our lives, Peter and I built what we thought was a simple, happy, working-class Australian family. Every morning began the same way in our weatherboard house on the hill, the smell of instant coffee and kookaburras yelling their heads off in the gum tree out the front. On a clear day, you could see a thin blue strip of ocean past the caravan park and the surf club. I worked as a teacher aide at the local primary school. My days were filled with tying shoelaces, calming tears, and hearing 7-year-olds tell wild stories about their weekends at Nan's. I knew half the town's kids before they knew how to spell their own names. Peter ran the Lawson Seaview cabins, a handful of old fibro units just down from the main road. He mowed the lawns, fixed taps, painted decks every summer, and talked to gray nomads about fishing spots and petrol prices. His hands were always rough, always stained with paint or oil, but soft when they needed to be. I used to joke that he could repair anything, a leaky hot water system or a bruised heart. We raised 2 children. Our firstborn, Daniel, arrived when I was 23. Bright, warm, always ready to help. The kind of kid who kept spare footy socks in his bag because someone will forget theirs, Mum. He worked weekends at the cabins, chatting to guests, lugging rubbish, learning how things worked. 5 years later came our daughter, Chloe. Quiet, sharp, observant. Nothing slipped past her. She idolized Peter the way Daniel followed me around. Our little family split into soft pairs. Sundays were our anchor. After church, we'd gather around the old pine table Peter rescued from a council cleanup. Daniel would talk about maybe going to uni in Sydney one day, engineering, teaching, who knows. Chloe would roll her eyes and say she wasn't leaving the coast, not even for $1 million. It wasn't a fancy life, but it was ours, and I honestly thought it was enough. Every evening, after-school readers were packed away, and Peter had finished hosing down the units, we'd walk the clifftop path above the beach, the same path tourists use for their holiday photos. We held hands like teenagers, talking about super, selling the cabins one day, maybe buying a caravan and doing the big lap. I never imagined those walks were training for the one that nearly killed us. When Daniel turned 20, something shifted. He and Chloe started arguing, not typical sibling bickering, but a sharp, whispered tension that seemed too old for them. Sometimes I'd hear a hissed, "You can't do that," followed by a door slammed shut the moment I got close. Peter brushed it off. "They'll sort it, Mags. They always do," he'd say, eyes fixed on the footy. And I wanted to believe him, because believing him meant our family was still okay. Then one night in late August, the nor'easter had finally died down, leaving the air weirdly still. Daniel didn't come home. We waited. 9, 10, midnight. Chloe sat in her room, studying, but every time I walked past, she was staring at her phone. When I asked if she'd heard from her brother, she looked away too quickly. By 2 a.m, Peter was out in the ute with half the neighborhood, checking the servo, the pub, the skate park, the beach car park. They found Daniel's body at the bottom of the headland near the lookout. The same headland where, 3 days ago, my daughter tried to finish what someone else started. The police said he must have slipped while rock fishing. "Happens all the time along this coastline, Mrs. Lawson," one officer told me softly, like he was talking about the tide. I didn't question it. I couldn't, because the alternative was unbearable. Daniel's funeral was the coldest day of my life, even under a bright sun. I wore a black dress from Kmart and stood at the front of the little church, clutching his photo while half the town filed in behind us. Chloe barely cried. While I could hardly stand upright, she just sat stiffly, jaw tight, eyes locked on the altar. Back then, I told myself it was shock. Now that memory makes my skin crawl. Peter held me the whole time, his hand firm on my back, whispering about faith, strength, and getting through it together. I believed him. I believed everything he said. I believed he was telling me the whole truth. It took nearly 30 years and a fall from a cliff to realize both those beliefs were lies. After Daniel died, the house never sounded the same. The kookaburras still laughed in the gum tree, the magpies still waddled across the front lawn like they ran the joint, and the surf still thudded in the distance, but inside, everything had a strange, hollow quiet to it, a silence that felt heavy, like it had weight. For months, I kept setting 4 places at the table out of habit, 4 forks, 4 cups. Then I'd catch myself, stand there for a moment with a lump in my throat, and quietly put one setting back before Peter or Chloe came in. Chloe changed almost overnight. She had always been sharp with her words, the sort of girl who could cut right through you with one raised eyebrow. But after Daniel's funeral, she softened, almost too much. She started getting up early to make the coffee, packed my lunch for school, left little sticky notes on the fridge. "Love you, Mum. We'll get through this." If anyone else had seen her, they would have said, I was blessed, a good daughter stepping up. And I told myself the same thing, because when one child is gone, you cling to the idea that the other is still all right. Life settled into a quieter rhythm after that. The cabins kept ticking along, busy during Christmas and Easter, sleepy in winter when only gray nomads and the odd surf-mad backpacker came through. Sometimes I'd find Peter sitting on the low brick wall near Unit 3, looking out at the water with that far-off stare. I'd sit beside him and slip my hand into his, and he'd squeeze it gently. Daniel would have loved fixing up these old joints with me, hey Mags? I always agreed. We didn't talk about the headland. We didn't talk about the possibility that Daniel hadn't slipped. Some truths sit just outside what you can bear. By the time Chloe turned 25, she'd landed a job at a real estate office in town and brought home a new boyfriend, Liam. Liam was a sparky, loud laugh, white ute, handshake a bit too firm, the kind of bloke who called everyone mate, including me the moment he walked through the door. "Thanks for having me, Mags," he said at his first Sunday roast, loading up his plate. "Smells bloody amazing." He talked easily, always had a story about some reno disaster or a client with champagne dreams on a shoestring budget. At first, I liked him. He made Chloe laugh again, a proper laugh that crinkled her eyes like when she was a kid. But little things tugged at me. The way he'd look at the cabins when we drove past. The way he'd ask, almost casually, "So you guys own all the land right down to the back fence?" Or, "Ever thought about knocking these down and putting up something decent? Townhouses would fly here." Peter would chuckle and wave him off. "We're not developers, mate. Just keeping things going, one leaky tap at a time." Liam would smile, but there was always something behind it, a flicker of calculation. Chloe and Liam married in a small ceremony at the surf club. I cried helping her into the simple white Meyer dress she'd chosen, cried when Peter walked her down the aisle, cried when the DJ played a song everyone except me seemed to know. When they moved into a rental in town, I thought, right, this is the next chapter. Grandkids, Sunday lunches, Christmas at ours. And for a while, that's exactly how it looked. Their first baby was a little girl, Isla. 2 years later came Jackson. I became Nan. Peter became Pop. Toy cars cluttered our lounge-room floor, sippy cups turned up in the sink, and tiny socks appeared in our wash like they had minds of their own. From the outside, we were the picture of an ordinary Aussie family. Older couple who'd worked hard, built something modest, helped their kids where they could. Young couple juggling bills, kids, and big hopes. The first cracks came quietly. Chloe started turning up late for Sunday lunch, snapping at the kids, leaving early with vague excuses. Liam talked less and drank more beer on our back deck, thumbing his phone every few minutes. One afternoon, while I was making a cuppa, I heard them arguing out near the clothesline. "We can't keep waiting, Liam," Chloe hissed. "They're not getting any younger. If we don't sort something, we're stuffed." I froze mid-pour. By the time I walked out with the tea, they were smiling again. "You right, Mum?" Chloe said, taking her mug. "Yeah, love," I replied, even though something in my gut wouldn't settle. 6 months ago, things shifted from uneasy to wrong. It started with Chloe bringing up planning ahead at Sunday lunch, the way politicians talk when you know they're circling something. "Mum, Dad," she said, stirring sugar into her tea, "you've worked your guts out your whole lives. You should be relaxing, not dealing with maintenance, bookings, and rates." Liam nodded, eyes on Peter. "Yeah, mate. One fall off a ladder and you're done. You don't want to be up on roofs at your age." At first, I thought it was concern. Then Chloe slid a folder across the table. "I've done some numbers," she said. "If you sold the cabins, you'd be set for life. Pay off everything, put money in super, maybe buy a nice unit in a retirement village. We can help with the whole thing." The word help landed between us like a stone. Peter pushed the folder back without touching it. "We're not ready to talk about selling," he said quietly. "This place is our life." Chloe held her smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just think about it. We only want you looked after." I kept telling myself it was clumsy love, a daughter worrying about her parents. But it wasn't. And it took a missing bank statement, a late-night phone call, and a set of cliff walk photos to show me what it really was. The first real warning came on a Thursday afternoon. I'd just got home from school, still smelling faintly of glue sticks and sunscreen, when I found Peter sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of envelopes like they'd given him bad news in person. Bills, statements, the usual pile of adult life, but his face wasn't showing the normal end-of-month annoyance. There was something tighter in it, something unsure. "You all right, love?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. He nodded, but it was one of those slow, automatic nods people give when they're not all right at all. "Been going through the accounts for the cabins," he said quietly. "Something's not adding up." I pulled out the chair opposite him. "Show me." He hesitated, then slid a bank statement across the table. A neat little line of withdrawals caught my eye straight away. $150, $80, $200, another $120. Not big amounts, nothing that would have set off alarms at the bank, but enough for me to know Peter hadn't made them. "You didn't do these?" I asked. "No, and I know you didn't either." A cold little knot tightened in my stomach. Peter wasn't the worrying type. He could cut half his thumb off and still fix the lawnmower before heading to the hospital. But now his hands were shaking just slightly as he folded the statement. "We'll sort it out tomorrow," I said softly. "Probably a mistake." But even as the words came out of my mouth, I knew it wasn't a mistake. And I knew only a handful of people had access to the cabin accounts. Chloe. Liam. Or both. I didn't want to even think it, but the thought sat there anyway, heavy and unwelcome. That night at dinner, I watched them more closely than usual. Chloe looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, chewing slowly like the food didn't taste right. There was a tension in her jaw, the kind you get from gritting your teeth in your sleep. Liam, though, he was buzzing, talking fast, laughing loud, phone lighting up on the table every few minutes. He'd brought a cheap bottle of wine as a Friday Eve treat, but barely touched his glass. Halfway through the meal, Peter stepped out to take a call from one of the cabin guests. As soon as he left the room, Liam leaned in, lowering his voice like the walls had ears. "So, any more thoughts about that plan we talked about?" Chloe shot him a warning look. "Not now, Liam." He brushed her off, eyes on me. "It just makes sense, Mags. You and Pete could take it easy for once. Do a bit of traveling, maybe head up to the Kimberley. Buy a caravan, enjoy yourselves. You've earned it." I smiled tightly. "We're fine as we are." For a split second, something flickered across his face, annoyance, maybe frustration. Then the grin snapped back on. After they left, Peter sank onto the couch beside me, rubbing at his temples. "They're pushing too hard." "Mags," he muttered. "It's getting out of hand." "Do you reckon they're struggling with money?" "Could be. Everything's expensive these days, mortgage, childcare, you name it." I nodded, but that uneasy feeling, the one that had started earlier, dug in deeper. The next morning, I stopped by the real estate office to drop off some raffle tickets for the school feat. Chloe was at her desk, typing like she was racing the clock. "Hi, love," I said, trying to sound casual. She jumped, then quickly minimized whatever she was working on. That tiny flash, the panic in her eyes, made my heart twist. "Mum, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, just in the area. Thought I'd say hello." She relaxed a little, gave me a small smile, but she looked worn down, brittle around the edges. Before I could ask anything, her phone lit up. The caller ID made me stop. The name said Liam. But next to it was a logo, a property investment company. Not his electrical business. Something entirely different. Chloe's face drained of color. "Mom, can we talk later? I've got to take this." She ushered me out gently, closing the office door a little faster than normal. I stepped out onto the footpath, the sun warm on my shoulders, but something cold moved through me, a slow ripple right down the spine. Not fear. Not yet. Just the first hint of it. The sense that something under the surface of our ordinary little lives was starting to shift, like the sand slipping out from under your feet when a wave pulls back harder than expected. And I had no idea how bad it was going to get. Over the next few weeks, the pressure from Chloe and Liam didn't just increase, it settled into our lives the way Bindi Eye does in summer. Quiet at first, then suddenly everywhere. It started with small comments. Little lines slipped into everyday chats, harmless on the surface but sharp underneath. "Mom, are you sure you're keeping up with the booking system? It's looking a bit old school." "Dad, do you really want to be up ladders at your age? One slip and you're cactus." Said casually. Said often. Said with purpose. Then came the suggestions. Chloe turned up with glossy brochures for retirement villages, smiling retirees, lawn bowls, scones, all the usual marketing fluff. She laid them out on our table like we were supposed to nod politely and hand over our entire lives. Liam started emailing Peter articles about accessing equity and strategic liquidation. He added smiley emojis like he was sending memes, not financial pressure. And then, without asking us, they hired a financial advisor. A stranger. A bloke named Trent who wore shiny shoes, too much cologne, and called everyone champ. He sat at our kitchen table, flipping through our paperwork with the confidence of someone looking at his own files. "Look, folks," he said brightly, tapping his pen, "you're sitting on a seriously valuable block here. Develop, subdivide, sell, whichever way you slice it, you're onto a winner." Peter's jaw tightened. I could see the muscle near his temple twitch. "We didn't ask for this meeting," he said, voice flat. Trent chuckled like Peter had cracked a joke. "Your kids are just being proactive, planning ahead. You're not getting any younger." Peter pushed back his chair so fast it startled even me. "Mate," he said, calm but firm. "I've changed the oil filter on my ute in the rain at midnight. I've chased a brown snake out of cabin 2 with a broom. I can manage my own affairs." Trent packed up pretty quickly after that, but the damage lingered. The next day, Chloe stormed into the house, eyes red and temper thin. "Dad embarrassed us," she snapped, dropping her bag on the bench. "That advisor was trying to help. You made us look ridiculous." Peter didn't rise to it. He just dried his hands on the tea towel and leaned against the counter. "We didn't invite him. We don't want him involved." "Well, we do," Chloe shot back. There it was again. We, not her, not Liam. Something fused between them, and whatever it wasn't good. A small part of me bent under that moment, the way old gum branches give under wind. Things unraveled properly a few days later. I was outside hanging, washing on the hill's hoist when I heard Peter swear from inside the house. Not a muttered bloody hell, a real, full-throated snap I hadn't heard since Daniel died. I rushed in. He was standing at his desk, holding a printed bank statement, his face drained of color. "Mags, look at this. 2 large transactions. Both transfers. Both authorized in my name. My signature. Except, not my signature." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "That's not mine," I murmured. Peter nodded slowly. "Someone copied it." The amount missing made my stomach drop. Money we'd saved through droughts, rate hikes, school fees, all gone in 2 neat lines of text. My voice felt tight. "Do you think—" "It's not Liam," Peter said firmly, cutting me off. "He wouldn't know our banking login if it bit him." And then he looked at me. Really looked. For a moment, neither of us spoke. But the thought was there, awful, impossible, undeniable. "Chloe?" I sat down before my legs buckled. Chloe had always been clever, ambitious, driven. But forging her own mother's signature? Stealing from us? Before the shock even settled, the phone rang. Chloe. Her voice was bright and sugary, unnatural, the kind of sweetness that covers something sour. "Hey, Mum! Just checking if you and Dad have thought more about selling the cabins?" Peter stared at me across the room. My own voice stayed steady only because it had to. "We're not selling." A pause. Tight. Cold. "Mum," she said softly, "don't turn this into a problem." That tone. Not a request. A warning. I hung up. Not bravely, just because something inside me finally clicked into place. This wasn't about concern. It wasn't about our future. It was about control. And whatever trouble Chloe and Liam were drowning in, they were ready to drag us under with them. And I didn't know it then. But the forged signature was only the beginning. That night, Peter and I sat at the kitchen table under the warm flicker of the old light. Neither of us spoke. But deep down, I felt it. A change in the air, like the quiet before a weather front rolls in. The kind you don't notice until it's already on top of you. For a few days, Peter and I moved around the house like we were half there doing the usual things. Making tea, checking bookings, folding, washing. But our minds were stuck on one image. My signature. On a transfer I never signed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my own name written in someone else's hand. Neat enough to pass. Wrong enough to make my stomach twist. I kept trying to tell myself there had to be some explanation. A mix-up, a misclick, anything other than the truth sitting heavily in my chest. But by Saturday morning, there was no pretending. We were in strife, and the person dragging us into it was our own daughter. It was around midday when Chloe and Liam arrived without warning. They didn't knock, they walked straight into the kitchen like the place was already theirs. Liam wore that big grin of his, the one that never reached his eyes. Chloe smiled too, but it was stretched tight, like she'd practiced it in the car and couldn't quite keep it steady. "Mum, Dad, we've been thinking," she said brightly. Peter didn't bother with small talk. "We're not selling." She waved a hand as if he'd misunderstood. "No, nothing like that. We just thought, you two need a break, a proper one." Liam jumped in, voice way too loud for our quiet kitchen. "A long weekend away. Just the four of us. We'll take you up to Bonny Hills, do the coastal walk, get some family photos. Bit of fresh air, you'll love it." Chloe clasped her hands. "We could celebrate your early retirement," she added softly, though her eyes were sharp. Early retirement. Convenient wording. Peter said nothing at first. He just looked at Chloe. Really looked, trying to see the little girl she used to be beneath the woman pushing us into corners. "We'll think about it," he finally said. Her smile dropped instantly, replaced by irritation that flashed across her face like lightning. "There's nothing to think about, Dad," she said. "It's all booked." Liam pulled a folded itinerary from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. Accommodation. Transport. The coastal walk. All arranged. Without our knowledge. Without our agreement. A cold feeling ran through me. That night, Peter and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, our hands linked in the dark. "Mags," he whispered, "they're pushing too hard. It's not normal." "I know. I reckon they're in financial trouble." I nodded. "And we're the answer." He shifted beside me, wincing a little. His joints always played up at night, but this wasn't just pain, this was worry settling into his bones. "I haven't told you everything," he said quietly. My heart skipped. "About the bank accounts?" "No, about Daniel." The room seemed to hold its breath. "Pete, what do you mean?" He swallowed, voice tight. "There were things I didn't tell you back then, things I noticed before he died, things that didn't sit right." Silence settled between us, heavy as the dark. Before I could speak again, my phone buzzed. A message from Chloe. "Don't forget, we leave Friday morning. 7 a.m. sharp." No smiley face. No, "love you XX." Just an instruction. Peter exhaled slowly. "If we don't go, they'll find another way." He was right. They were already forging signatures, digging into accounts, pushing retirement brochures at us, turning up unannounced, booking trips we hadn't agreed to. If they truly meant us harm, refusing the trip wouldn't stop anything. It would only make them push harder. By Monday, the tension in the house felt thick, like a storm waiting to break. Every ring of the phone made me jump. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Then came the letter, a white envelope from the bank. Inside, a notice about a pending request for power of attorney access. Requested by Chloe Lawson. The walls seemed to tilt. I stared at Peter, whose face had gone pale. She's trying to take everything, I whispered. No, he said darkly. She's trying to take us. And we both knew what he meant. Once they had legal control, financial control, and us isolated on a cliffside walk, they'd have everything they needed. That night, Peter made his decision. When we go on this trip, he said, voice steady, I'm taking my phone. And I'll record every word they say. I turned to him in the dim kitchen light. If they're planning something, he said, we'll get proof. In that moment, something shifted. This wasn't a family getaway. It wasn't a break. It was something planned. Something we couldn't avoid. So if Chloe and Liam wanted that trip, we'd go, and we'd be ready. Friday dawned with a stillness that didn't belong to our little coastal town. No rowdy magpies marching along the fence, no kookaburras carrying on in the gum tree. Even the surf sounded further away, like the whole place was holding its breath. I packed slowly, folding clothes that didn't really need folding, just to give my hands something to do. Peter sat on the edge of the bed, lacing up his boots with the grim focus of a man heading to court, not on a family weekend away. His phone, set to record and double-checked twice, was stitched into the lining of his jacket pocket. You wouldn't have known it was there. I did. And it felt like the only thing standing between us and a very quiet disappearance. At 6:55 a.m. on the dot, a white ute crunched up our driveway. Liam gave 2 sharp honks, not even pretending to be patient. Chloe jumped out, all bright colors and fresh activewear, not a hair out of place. Ready, Mom? She called, voice high and chirpy. Big adventure day. Adventure. Right. Peter locked the front door carefully, turning the key like he was sealing up a museum. I knew what he was doing, leaving everything exactly as it was, just in case someone else had to walk back into that house without us. The drive north felt longer than it was. Chloe kept up a stream of fluffy conversation, fuel prices, the kids' latest daycare story, a silly thing Isla had said at breakfast. If you'd only listened to the words, you'd think it was any ordinary Friday. But I was listening underneath, to the tightness in her laugh, to the way Liam's fingers tapped on the steering wheel, restless, like he was counting down. Peter held my hand between the seats. His thumb drew slow circles over my skin, the way he always did when I was nervous. It took me a few minutes to realize he was shaking. About an hour in, Chloe twisted around in her seat to look at us. So, Mum, Dad, after this weekend, let's sit down and sort the paperwork, yeah? Power of attorney, future plans, all that. Her tone was casual. Her eyes weren't. I forced my lips into something that resembled a smile. We'll talk about it later, love. Her gaze hardened for a heartbeat, just a flicker, then smoothed over. Liam cleared his throat. Yeah, it's important you two don't leave this stuff too late. Accidents happen. The way he said accidents made my stomach lurch. Peter's grip on my hand tightened until my fingers tingled. He stared straight ahead, saying nothing. The landscape blurred past paddocks, scrub, the occasional servo, glimpses of blue where the ocean met the sky. All of it familiar and suddenly strange, like we'd slipped sideways into a different version of our own lives. When we pulled into the car park at Camden Head Lookout, the wind hit us hard. It came straight off the water, salty, cold, relentless. The cliffs here were higher than the ones back home, the drops steeper, the rocks below sharper and meaner. Beautiful. If you weren't thinking about how far you'd fall. Chloe stretched her arms out dramatically. Isn't this just gorgeous? Best spot for photos. Photos. Of us. On the edge. Liam grabbed his camera from the back, checked the lens, and slung it around his neck with a practiced motion. He'd always called it a hobby, but today it felt like something else. Proof. Alibi. Insurance. We started walking. The first part of the track was easy, wide gravel path. Clear signage, families with prams and kids on scooters. People nodded hello in that polite bushwalk way. Chloe kept pushing us on. No, the lookout up there is better. The photos will be amazing. Just a bit further, Mum. Step by step, the path narrowed. The railings disappeared. The scrub thickened. The drop to our right stopped being a distant view and turned into an immediate howling presence. At one point, Peter's boot slipped on some loose gravel. He caught himself quickly, but Chloe gasped like she'd seen a near-death experience. See? She said, hand on her chest. This is exactly what we're worried about. One little slip and Liam cut in smoothly. We'd never forgive ourselves if something happened to you two. The words were right. The feeling behind them wasn't. Peter steadied himself and grunted. We're fine. Been walking tracks like this longer than you've been alive. They didn't answer, but I caught the look they shared behind his back. Not concern. Calculation. Nearly an hour in, we reached a section where the dirt track pinched into a rocky ledge. No railing, just rough stone underfoot and a brutal drop where the land simply stopped. The waves below smashed themselves to pieces against black rock. The sound rose up in bursts, roaring, then fading, then roaring again. Chloe clapped her hands. Here, this is perfect. My mouth went dry. Liam lifted the camera, squinting through the viewfinder. Yeah, let's get a shot of you two right on the edge. The background's bloody amazing from here. The edge. Peter stepped closer to me, his arm brushing mine. Mags, he murmured, so low only I could hear. This is it. My heart thumped so loudly I was sure they'd hear it over the wind. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to say no, to turn around, to walk back to the crowded car park where toddlers were throwing tantrums over ice creams. But instinct doesn't stand up well against children who've already forged signatures and moved money, children who've booked trips and drawn up plans without asking. If we refused here, they'd find another way. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere with no witnesses and no recording. At least on this ledge, Peter's phone was running. Every word, every slip, every order. Chloe positioned us like we were props. Back a bit, Mum, just one more step. Yeah, there. That's it, closer together. Her voice was bright. Her eyes were all business. Peter slid his arm around my waist. To anyone watching, it would have looked romantic. I knew better. His fingers dug into my hip like an anchor. Stay steady, he whispered. Whatever happens, don't let go. The wind tugged at my jacket. Salt stung my lips. The horizon wobbled. Liam lowered the camera a fraction and muttered, almost under his breath, "It has to look natural." Chloe fiddled with her ponytail, breath coming a bit too fast. "Just push on 3. 3. The air changed. The waves seemed to surge louder. The space behind my back suddenly mattered more than the view in front of me. In that split second, it hit me with crystal clarity. We weren't about to walk into danger. We were standing in the middle of it. Liam's words cut through the wind, quiet but sharp enough to make my whole body tense. Just push on 3. For a moment, everything felt suspended, the ocean rumbling below, the wind tugging at my jacket, Peter standing solid beside me. Our boots were only inches from the drop, and my stomach turned as the truth finally settled into place. The forged signature, the missing money, the trip they'd organized without asking. Chloe wasn't waiting for us to hand anything over. She was waiting for us to disappear. I felt her step in behind us, light, shaky, too close. Her breath hit the back of my neck, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't comforted by the presence of my own child. Liam fiddled with his camera, pretending to check the settings, but he kept glancing around, making sure no one else was on the track. It was a quiet part of the walk, no prams, no chatter, no weekend hikers, just us. Exactly how they wanted it. Peter leaned in, barely moving his lips. "Hold on to me, Mags, no matter what." I squeezed his hand once our old silent way of saying yes. Then Chloe's voice came, bright but trembling. 1. Her foot shifted behind me, gravel crunching under her shoe. 2. Before the third count, Peter shifted his weight, not much, just enough to throw off whatever timing they'd planned. It was subtle, like adjusting his stance, but Chloe let out a frustrated little gasp. "Dad, stop it," she snapped, her voice cracking. Liam hissed back, low and urgent. "Just do it. Now." And then everything happened at once. A shove from behind, Peter yanking me sideways. Loose stones sliding under our boots. The ledge tilting sharply. My knee buckled. His hand clamped around my waist. And before I could even understand what was happening, the ground vanished beneath us. We didn't fall far, not the full drop, not the gorge bottom. Our bodies slammed onto a narrow lower ledge hidden by scrub and rock, hard enough to rattle every bone I owned. Pain burst through my shoulder and hip. Dust filled my mouth. Something sharp tore through my sleeve. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to sound the crash of waves below, the scrape of gravel from above, someone crying out. Then Peter's voice, rough and breathless. "Mags, don't move. Play dead." I forced my body into stillness, even though every nerve screamed. Above us, voices shaken, panicked. "Liam, my leg, I can't put weight on it." Chloe sounded frightened, but not for us. "I slipped," Liam groaned. "Bloody rocks. Just check if they're down there." My heart lurched. More gravel shifted. Someone crawling closer to the ledge. Then Liam's voice, right above us, strained and shaky. "Look, there. They're not moving." A pause. A long one. Then, "They're gone. They have to be." Chloe let out a broken sob, not grief, but relief. "Oh my God. We didn't mean it just happened." Liam cut her off, sharp. "Stick to the story. They slipped. We tried to grab them. That's it." Their breathing was ragged, panicked they hadn't planned to fall themselves. They were hurt, disoriented, scrambling to hold a collapsing plan together. "We need reception," he muttered. "Come on. Crawl if you have to." Their voices faded, mixed with the wind. I waited until I could no longer hear their steps scraping the path above us. Then Peter whispered, every breath a struggle. "Mags, you all right?" I opened my eyes a sliver. Yes. Relief washed across his face, even through the pain. His leg was twisted at an angle that made my stomach drop. He winced with every inhale. "Your phone?" I rasped. He nodded faintly. "Still recording. Everything, their panic, their whispered plan, their relief when they thought we were dead, all of it captured." I pushed myself up just enough to see the sky. Bright blue, peaceful, completely detached from the mess our family had become. A wave of pain rolled through me, but something else rolled with it, a cold clarity. We weren't safe yet. We needed help. Real help. Peter swallowed hard. "Mags, before anything else, there's something I didn't tell you. Something about Daniel. That night." I froze. Not because of the fall. Not because of Chloe. Not because of Liam. But because of Peter's voice, the weight in it, the regret, the years of something unsaid. "What about that night?" I whispered. He closed his eyes, gathering himself. And in that moment, I knew. Falling off the cliff wasn't the worst part of this story. The truth Peter had been carrying for nearly 30 years was going to hurt far more than the landing. I wasn't prepared for it. Not the pain in my ribs, not the warm trickle of blood along my temple. But this, the tremor in Peter's voice, the truth he'd carried for almost 30 years. We lay half-hidden on the narrow ledge, broken and breathless, gulls circling above. The salt stung my lips, dust clung to my skin, and yet the ocean suddenly felt miles away. Peter swallowed hard. "Mags." Daniel didn't fall, not the way they said. My heart stopped, then lurched painfully. "Pete, what do you mean?" He blinked through the pain, shame settling across his face. He didn't slip while fishing. He wasn't even fishing. He was pushed. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Couldn't. Daniel, my boy who laughed in the mornings and left muddy boots by the door. The child who carried extra footy socks, just in case someone forgets theirs, Mum. Everything inside me went cold. "Who?" I whispered. Peter closed his eyes, tears sliding into the dust on his cheeks. Chloe was there. A hollow crack opened in my chest. "No," I choked. "She was 15. She loved him." He shook his head weakly. "They'd been fighting. More than you knew. Daniel found out she'd been stealing from us, not a few dollars real money." He confronted her, told her she had to come clean. I stared at him, numb. The world blurred around the edges. "They walked to the headland," Peter continued, voice thinning. "Daniel wanted her to tell us before he did. She panicked. They struggled. He stumbled. My fingers curled against the dirt. I followed them," he rasped. I'd heard them arguing earlier. Something felt wrong. I wasn't close enough to stop it, but I saw him go over. The breath left my body in a shudder. "She didn't go after him, Mags. She just froze. And then she ran." The gorge spun slightly. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked under the weight of it. His answer was quiet, raw. "She begged me. She said it was an accident. She said she was terrified you'd hate her. She was 15. I told myself she made a terrible mistake, that she wasn't thinking straight. He trembled. I thought keeping it quiet would protect her, that if we raised her right afterwards, she'd grow out of whatever was going on inside her. I closed my eyes, grief settling like iron. But she hadn't grown out of it. She'd grown into it. A faint noise drifted down a groan, the shuffle of loose gravel. Chloe and Liam were somewhere above us, still trying to climb out, still arguing in panicked whispers. Peter's fingers found mine, his grip weak but steady. "She's been like this since she was a teenager," he said softly, "hiding things, twisting things, taking chances she shouldn't. But this," he nodded toward the cliff top, "this is different. Liam's part of it. They're desperate." The truth twisted in my chest until it hurt to breathe. "So Daniel died because she panicked," I whispered. "Because she ran." Peter nodded once. "It wasn't murder. It was a shove, a stupid moment, a mistake, but leaving him there, that's what killed him." A small sound escaped me, something between a sob and a sharp breath. All those years of grief, confusion, trying to fit shattered pieces together, and now this. I wanted to scream, cry, hit something. I wanted to climb up that cliff and demand answers from the daughter I no longer recognized. But if I moved now, if either of us made a sound too soon, Chloe and Liam would look over the edge, and we were in no state to survive a second fall. So I stayed still. A gust of wind swept dust across our faces. Somewhere above, Chloe's frightened voice carried down, "Liam, hurry up, someone's going to come eventually." Liam snapped something back, angry, pained, desperate. Not regret, not grief. Just fear of getting caught. Something inside me hardened. A steel core replacing the softness that had lived in me since the day I became a mother. If Chloe had buried the truth once, I would be the one to bring it back into the light. And I would not let her bury anyone else. Peter squeezed my hand gently. "We'll get out of this," he murmured. "We've got proof this time." I nodded, swallowing the burn in my throat. "We survive," I whispered. "Then we tell everything." His mouth twitched into the faintest smile. "That's my girl." The waves crashed far below, steady and uncaring. And for the first time since Daniel died, the truth wasn't a shadow we forced ourselves to ignore. It was a weapon. And we were done being silent. The hours that followed were some of the longest of my life. Pain did strange things to time. It stretched the seconds thin, made every breath feel like hard work, turned the world into flashes of sound and color instead of anything solid. Above us, Chloe and Liam's voices came and went on the wind like a dodgy radio signal. Sometimes they were arguing, sometimes they were crying, sometimes it went quiet long enough that I wondered if they'd passed out or were just sitting up there, working on their story. Peter's hand stayed wrapped around mine, his grip slackening only when the pain spiked and he had to fight for breath. "Stay with me, Mags," he murmured. "We've come too far to let them win now." He was right. If we'd survived the fall, we'd survive the rest. At some point, Chloe's voice rang out, high and theatrical. "Help! Somebody please, down here!" She sounded like a woman in a TV drama. If I hadn't known what she'd done, I might have believed her. Might have. A few minutes later, maybe longer, maybe shorter, I couldn't tell, the thud, thud, thud of helicopter blades rolled over us, the downdraft sending grit and leaves spinning through the air. Loose stones rattled down the gorge walls, pinging off rocks near my head. Peter squeezed my fingers. "Ambos," he whispered. "Told you. They need this to look legit." The chopper hovered above. Voices shouted, clear and steady, nothing like Chloe's breathless panic. "Two down there! Rope team, we've got movement, prepare stretchers." Boots crunched on gravel. A torch beam cut through the dust. A gloved hand touched my neck, then my wrist. "Female, mid-late 60s, pulse present, breathing shallow, possible head injury, suspected fractures." Another voice, nearer Peter. "Male, similar age, pulse weak but there. Let's stabilize and get them out." I let my body stay limp. Every instinct screamed at me to sit up, point to the top of the cliff and yell, "They did this. Our own daughter did this." But Peter's whisper came again, barely there. "Not yet. We need the recording safe. We need police." So I played dead or as close to it as I could manage, while strangers strapped a brace around my neck and slid me onto a stretcher. Every movement sent hot pain knifing through my ribs, but I kept my eyes mostly shut, letting the edges of my vision blur. As they lifted me, I caught a glimpse up the slope. Chloe, standing near the edge, hair wild, face streaked with tears and dirt. Liam beside her, pale and stiff, one arm wrapped around his ribs. A paramedic was checking his leg. From where I lay, I could hear everything. Chloe lunged forward as they wheeled me past. "Mum, oh my God, Mum, is she going to be okay?" Her voice cracked on cue. A paramedic moved between us. "Step back, love. We need space to work." Chloe clutched at her own chest, like some grieving widow from a soapy. "This is all my fault," she sobbed. "We just wanted a nice walk. They slipped. They just slipped." Liam chimed in, voice hoarse but convenient. I tried to grab Pete. I swear I did. I would have laughed if it didn't hurt so much to breathe. They weren't just lying. They were rehearsing. One of the rescue workers, an older bloke with sunburnt cheeks and a no-nonsense voice, spoke quietly into his radio. "2 critical fall victims, both conscious at scene at some point. Mechanism unclear. Request police attendance at hospital. This doesn't look like your average misstep." Chloe heard it. I saw the flicker in her eyes. For half a second, the mask slipped fear, pure and sharp, flashing across her face. Then the performance snapped back into place. "Please," she whispered, hands clasped. "Please save them." The hypocrisy made my skin crawl. They loaded Peter onto the chopper first, then slid my stretcher in beside him. The rotor wash roared, drowning out Chloe's crying, Liam's muttering, the rescuers' clipped directions. A paramedic leaned over me, tightening the straps. "You're safe now, Margaret," he said, voice gentle but firm. "We've got you. We're taking you straight to Port Macquarie." Safe. Maybe for the first time all day, that word wasn't completely wrong. Because up here, in this cramped helicopter cabin, all straps and beeping monitors and professional hands, Chloe and Liam couldn't reach us. They couldn't push, couldn't whisper, couldn't twist the story in our ears. Peter turned his head the tiniest fraction on his pillow, his eyes finding mine. "You all right, Mags?" he croaked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm alive." He gave the smallest, crooked grin. "Good. That'll really wreck their day." Despite everything, a tiny, broken laugh escaped me. It hurt, but it felt clean, real. The coastline slid away beneath us, cliffs, scrub, ocean. The gorge where we'd nearly died shrank to a scratch in the earth. Somewhere in Peter's jacket pocket, his phone held everything. Liam's muttered, "It has to look natural." Chloe's, "Just push on 3. Their terrified admission that they thought we were dead. Evidence. Truth. A second chance both for us and for Daniel. I closed my eyes and let the hum of the helicopter settle into my bones. Chloe and Liam thought the fall would end our story. They thought they'd walk away as the grieving, innocent children, free to sell our life's work to the highest bidder. What they didn't realize was simple. They hadn't written the ending. They'd only set the scene. And I was still here, a 60-year-old woman from a small coastal town, held together by bandages and sheer bloody will. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to tell the whole story about the cliff, about the money, about Daniel so loudly that not even my own daughter could bury it again. The hospital lights nearly knocked the breath out of me, bright, cold, the sort that made everything look harder than it already was. Nothing felt soft or forgiving. Not the air, not the bed, not the reality I'd woken up to. I drifted in and out while the paramedics handed me over, voices blurred. Possible fractured ribs. Keep her airway clear. Trauma Bay 2 move. Somewhere close, Peter groaned. That sound alone pulled me back from the fog. I wasn't going anywhere, not yet. Not while the truth still needed saying. The moment we were pushed through the emergency doors, security stepped in and held Chloe and Liam back. And Chloe did exactly what I expected. "That's my mother," she shouted, voice cracking like cheap glass. "She needs me." A nurse blocked her path, calm, firm, used to this sort of scene. Liam touched her arm, not lovingly, quietly, warning her to pull herself together. She shook him off and kept crying as if the world was watching. If only she knew who really was. Inside the trauma bay, a nurse in blue scrubs leaned over me. Her badge read, "Emma Kerrigan." Her eyes were the kind that missed nothing. "Ma'am," she murmured, "if you can hear me, blink twice." I opened my eyes halfway and blinked twice. The tiniest shift crossed her face recognition, then a spark of concern that went deeper than the job required. She checked my injuries with careful hands while the doctors worked around her. Every touch sent pain shooting through me, sharp along my ribs, heavy through my ankle, but pain meant I was still alive. And being alive meant Chloe and Liam's plans were starting to unravel. When the team stepped back to prep scans, Emma bent close again. "If you're in danger," she whispered, "move your fingers." My fingers twitched once. Her breath caught. "Your daughter," she breathed. 2 small movements. She didn't flinch, didn't panic, just steadied herself, like someone used to bad news that came in layers. "I'm going to get the senior doctor and a police officer," she whispered. "No one will know you're responsive except us. Nod if that's all right." I gave the smallest nod my neck would tolerate. And just like that, a stranger became the first person outside our family to know the truth, even if she didn't have the full picture yet. Minutes later, controlled footsteps approached. Dr. Hughes. A police constable, a woman with a sharp gaze, and the stance of someone who'd seen plenty and believed little without checking. Emma spoke quickly and quietly. "She's awake, scared. I think this fall wasn't clean." The constable stepped beside my bed. "Ma'am," she said gently, "just blink if you feel threatened by the people who brought you here." I blinked. Once. Slow and certain. Her jaw tightened. "Understood." She stepped aside and radioed someone. 2 officers to remain outside Trauma Bay 2. No family access until further notice. Exactly what we needed. As they worked on me, oxygen mask, pain relief, scans being prepped, I caught sight of Peter being wheeled into the bay beside mine. Pale but alive, his hand found mine across the gap. "We're all right," I whispered, barely a breath. He squeezed back. Then Emma returned, holding a clear bag, the one containing Peter's jacket. "The rescue medic said there might be a phone in here," she said. "Yours?" Peter nodded weakly. Emma unzipped the bag, rummaged carefully, and pulled out the phone-cracked screen, dirt along the edges, but still holding charge. She pressed the side button. The screen lit up. A recording timer blinked red. Still going. Emma stared at it, horrified. "How long?" Peter's voice was thin but steady. "Since the walk." The constable leaned in. "That could be everything we need." She took a step toward the door. "I'll get detectives and arrange protective custody for both of you." Emma touched my hand gently. "You're safe here. We'll look after you." Safe. A strange word, fragile, unfamiliar, but for the first time since the cliff, it didn't feel completely out of reach. Because now, we had more than fear. We had evidence. We had witnesses. And we had survived long enough to hand the truth over to someone who could actually do something with it. Chloe and Liam thought the fall had silenced us. But lying there under those harsh hospital lights with Peter beside me, the recording alive in Emma's hands, and the police already moving, I knew they were the ones running out of time. Our voices hadn't been taken. They'd only just begun. Morning crept through the hospital blinds in a pale strip of light, quiet, gentle, nothing like the night we'd survived. The world didn't feel safer, not yet, but something in it felt underway, like the wheels had finally started turning. Just after sunrise, 2 detectives arrived. No uniforms, no flashing lights, just that steady, grounded presence that makes a room stop pretending. Detective Senior Constable Rowan introduced herself with a warm nod. She was in her 40s, solid stance, sensible shoes, hair pulled back neatly, the kind of woman who'd seen enough to stay calm, but not enough to lose her softness completely. She pulled a chair beside my bed. "Mrs. Lawson, don't push yourself. Tell me whatever you can manage." Before I could speak, Peter shifted in his bed next to mine, wincing as his ribs protested. "The phone," he murmured. "Start there." Rowan nodded, flipping open a thick folder. "We've already begun reviewing the audio," she said. "There's a lot on it, enough to move quickly." I let out a long, shaky breath. Not relief exactly, but something close to it. She scanned her notes. "We've identified them discussing a plan to push you, comments about making it look natural, and phrases indicating they needed to stick to a specific story." When she looked at me again, her eyes were kind. "It's strong evidence. Maggie. Very strong." I swallowed. I wish it wasn't. Because every word on that recording was another crack in what used to be my family. Then came a question I knew she had to ask, even if it cut clean through me. Did you have any idea your daughter might do something like this? I stared at the blanket covering my legs, the faded hospital green blurring around the edges. I knew she'd changed, but this? No, not in my worst thoughts. Beside me, Peter closed his eyes. She killed her brother. Rowan turned to him, her face tightening. You mentioned that earlier. Are you up for giving a formal statement? Peter nodded, voice breaking before he even began. What followed was unbearable. He told her everything he'd never told me. About that night on the headland, the fight, the shove, Daniel falling, Chloe running. Rowan didn't interrupt, didn't rush him, didn't flinch. She just listened steady, focused, the way a good detective does when she knows the truth is sitting right in front of her. When he finished, she let out a slow breath. Mr. Lawson, we'll need to reopen the file on Daniel. This changes the nature of the investigation. She stood and gazed out the window for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When you add what happened yesterday, it paints a very different picture of your daughter and Mr. Carter. A nurse came in later to tell us Chloe and Liam were still at the hospital. They'd stayed overnight in the relatives' waiting area. Wanted to be close to you both, she said. The performance rolled on, except now 2 uniformed officers were stationed outside their door. They weren't going anywhere. I could imagine the scene. Chloe pacing, twisting her hair around her fingers the way she always had when she was cornered. Liam trying his usual charm on the officers. Neither of them getting answers. For the first time in years, they were the ones sitting in uncertainty. Close to midday, Rowan returned, another officer behind her. We've listened to the full recording, she said. All of it. Her pause was deliberate. We'll be arresting Chloe Lawson and Liam Carter for attempted murder. The words landed like a weight on my chest, heavier than any injury I had. Peter reached for my hand. Weak grip, but steady. Are we safe now? He asked quietly. Rowan nodded. You're being moved to a secure ward until we finish the arrests. After that, you'll be under police protection. No one gets near you without approval. Emma, the nurse who first realized I wasn't unconscious, slipped into the room then, standing quietly near the foot of my bed. Her presence was oddly comforting. Rowan turned back to me. Are you ready for what comes next? Ready. The word felt too big, too final. But I lifted my chin. Do what you need to do. Rowan squeezed my shoulder once, gentle but firm, then stepped out with her team. A few minutes later, raised voices echoed down the corridor, then shouting. Then Chloe's voice shrill and sharp enough to cut glass. What do you mean, attempted murder? They fell. I didn't do anything. Liam snapped right after her. This is a setup. You've got nothing. Doors slammed. Orders barked. Footsteps scuffled. Then Rowan's calm, unwavering voice rose above it all. We have it all on record. And they survived. Silence. Thick. Shock-filled. Then, Chloe's voice, tiny and cracking. Alive? What followed was not grief, not worry, not love, but a strangled sob of pure fear, because in that moment she finally understood. We hadn't died. We hadn't stayed quiet, and she couldn't bury the truth a second time. Rowan returned minutes later. They're in custody, she said softly. It should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something vast and painful and necessary. I closed my eyes, letting the sterile hospital air fill my lungs. Not peace, not yet. But the first faint step toward it, the very first. The courtroom smelled of old timber and cleaning spray, quiet, familiar scents that made me think of school halls and long hospital corridors. Somehow it felt fitting. Pieces of my past meeting the place where everything would finally be laid bare. 6 months had passed since the fall. 6 months of surgeries, physio appointments, and nights where sleep never quite arrived. And now Peter and I sat side by side, both in wheelchairs, waiting for the people who would decide what became of our daughter and the man she'd chosen to follow. The room was packed. Reporters at the back, locals from Marlin Head filling the benches, their faces a mix of shock, pity, and disbelief. Everyone knew Chloe as the bright girl from the coast, the one who painted murals at school and captained the netball team. No one wanted this to be true, least of all me. but wishing never changed the truth, and justice doesn't soften for anyone. When the bailiff called my name, "Mrs. Margaret Lawson, please take the stand," I felt the whole room tilt slightly, like everything inside me was preparing for impact. Peter squeezed my arm before I wheeled forward. Detective Rowan met my eyes from the gallery, a steady reminder that I wasn't walking into this alone. I gave evidence for nearly 3 hours. I told them about the walk, the push, the recording, and the long-buried truth about Daniel. Every word felt heavy, like I was lifting stones from somewhere deep inside me. The courtroom shifted, with each piece gasps, whispers, the rustle of people trying to make sense of the story they never expected to hear. But the hardest moment came when the defense lawyer asked, "Mrs. Lawson, do you still love your daughter?" The room froze. I took a long breath. "Love doesn't disappear," I said quietly, "but trust can." And mine broke the moment she tried to kill us. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply the truth. When Peter took the stand, the atmosphere changed again. His voice, rough with age and pain, carried the secret he'd lived with for decades. He told them about Daniel, about the fight, about Chloe running instead of helping, about the silence he'd held for 30 years. The judge had to call for order twice. People cried. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Peter's voice cracked only once. "If I'd spoken up then, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I'm sorry for our boy. And for the daughter we couldn't bring back to the right side of things." Chloe didn't look at him, or at me. Her face was blank, drained of anything I recognized. It didn't take the jury long. 5 hours later, the four-person stood, hands trembling slightly, on the charge of attempted murder. Guilty. A quiet sob came from somewhere behind me. It could have been anyone. It could have been me. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. Chloe's shoulders stiffened. Liam stared at the floor, jaw tight. And on the charge of manslaughter relating to the death of Daniel Lawson. Guilty. Silence swept the room. Chloe's fingers twitched, an old childhood habit that used to show nerves before school speeches. Now it had nowhere left to hide. The judge delivered the sentence in a steady voice that carried through the whole room. Life imprisonment. No parole for 25 years. For both of them. There was no cheering. No sense of triumph. Just a soft, tired exhale from the room. Grief and inevitability settling over everyone like a fine layer of dust. Justice isn't a victory. It's a reckoning. 3 weeks later, Peter and I returned home to Marlin Head. The jacaranda tree in our yard was in bloom, purple petals drifting across the driveway like a quiet reminder that life keeps moving, even after it breaks. Social services approved our guardianship of Ella and Jack. They were still too young to understand the whole story, but old enough to feel the shift in their world. On their first night with us, Ella climbed into my lap. "Nana, are we safe now?" I wrapped my arms around her, breathing in the scent of shampoo and sunshine. "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. "We're safe, and we're going to build something new together." Peter watched us from the armchair, tired but smiling. We weren't the same people we were before the fall. Some things had healed, others never would. But we were still here, still standing, in our own way. Each evening, when the sea breeze rolls in and the kookaburras start up their rough laughter, I sit on the patio with Ella and Jack. We talk about Daniel, the uncle they never met, the boy with the kind heart and the sunny grin. I tell them about choosing the right path, even when the wrong one looks easier. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the tide pushes high against the rocks, I whisper a promise into the air. "Your truth didn't go with you, Daniel, and neither did ours." This time, the truth didn't stay buried. It rose when it needed to. It kept us alive. And now, finally, we get to live, too.